Welcome to today's Zycus webinar. The topic of today is the role of technology in enabling world-class performance. My name is Mélani Flores, and I'm from the Hackett Group. I've been invited by Zycus to be your presenter today in this webinar and take you through some of the insights that we have gained in this area. So as you know, Zycus is a leading provider of source-to-pay suite of procurement performance solutions. Really what we are going to be taking you today is about some of those insights in terms of technology and how it's playing this role in the performance of a procurement function. So before we move on, let me just introduce myself, Mélani Flores, with the Hackett Group. I'm the practice leader for the procurement and purchase to pay practice, advisory practice in EMEA. And I've been working around, over 20 years in different industries around procurement, benchmarking strategies, etc. So let me take you very briefly about who the Hackett Group is for some of you that might not be familiar with our organization. Hackett Group is a consulting and advisory organization. We define world-class performance within the procurement area, but also across the general and administration. So we do the same work around finance, IT, HR, and procurement. We define what world-class is. We address both areas which, in our opinion, are critical for fulfilling the objectives of the business, which is efficiency and effectiveness. And we are very much fact-based, so what you will see in some of the slides is, a number of metrics that we use. We have been conducting a number of engagements and studies that help us to, provide advice very fact-based. So for those of you that are familiar with Hackett, you might have heard about our benchmarking services, which is one of the, is really at the core of what we do at Hackett in terms of how we gather in a very strict way that enables us to comparisons across organizations and externally. And so we have the benchmarking services in all the functions that I mentioned. We have our transformation consulting services, and we have the membership advisory services, which are really, as the name says, a membership where we work with organizations, helping them to improve their performance in a number of areas. So let me take you really through what is the most important of what we are going to be looking at today. First of all, we're going to go through what is the service delivery model for procurement and how organizations are architecting this. So we're going to review some of that, and I'm going to share with you what the most advanced organizations are doing in this area. We're also going to go into the more detail about, for all the different areas in the service delivery model of the procurement functions, what is about technology and information. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper in each of those. And to then move into what are the technology capabilities that really correlate to top performance in the function of procurement. I think there are some very well-known things around what are great enablers in technology is one of them, but I'm going to touch in some specific areas around those capabilities that really drive performance. And clearly, by doing this, I'm also going to cover some of the areas of benefit that can generate those enablers if implemented properly, which is quite important to see. If we have time, I'm going to allow at the session for some questions and answers, and please, if we don't have time or we didn't cover your specific question, please, still send that to us, and I'm going to be glad to, provide you responses after that. So let me start with the service delivery model, and we said that the topic is around technology enabling world-class performance. So let me take you very briefly about how to define world-class performance, because this is important for the rest of the slides and the concept of enabling that level of performance. So at Hackett, we define what world-class performance is for a particular function. In this case is procurement, and I'm showing you is what we call the Hackett value grid, which actually helps plot organizations the performance of different organizations around two dimensions, which is efficiency and effectiveness. So efficiency is really things about how efficient we are, the use of resources in doing the activities that we should be doing. And the effectiveness side is more about the value that we are delivering, how effective we are in doing the activities that we are supposed to be doing within the procurement function. So at Hackett, we take, it's very important to identify what the world-class performer is, or top quartile performer, based on really outcomes. So this is when we define which organizations are world-class, we don't look at whether they have done these, have implemented that particular best practice, or they have not, or they have this particular technology or functionality or not. And it's rather based on outcomes. So if organizations manage to achieve, to deliver a great performance in the area of efficiency, but at the same time they balance to do that the right level of effectiveness, those are placed in this value grid, and then are the ones that are based in that blue box you are looking at, which is the top quartile efficiency and effectiveness. And obviously, when I'm talking about outcomes, there are many metrics and many KPIs that are going to play a role in that. And efficiency, typically, you will see, for example, the cost of the procurement function. You will see the number of full-time equivalents that you have in your functions, your cycle times, etc. Those type of metrics count in the efficiency side. And from the effectiveness point of view, you see, for example, the quality of your processes, and you will see, for example, the savings that the procurement function is achieving, the role that is playing, or how it's seen by the internal stakeholders. So it's really all about the value that is delivering and how it's helping the business to achieve their objectives. So again, when we talk about how technology is leveraging world-class performance, what we are talking about in this at Hackett in this particular webinar is about how technology is enabling this level of performance. So a balanced approach is not only be efficient and to a certain extent cheap. It's also not about generating the greatest value for the rest of the business alone, and rather the balanced approach of achieving efficiency and an effectiveness. So obviously, if you think about all the different metrics that I mentioned and all what can needed in order to enable that level of performance, well, there are many areas, including technology, which is we're going to be looking at or starting to look at today, but the others are as technology, the processes that you have in place, the strategy, your ambition, the processes, the people that have in place. So it's not an isolated view of, you get to world class or you deliver world class performance by, any particular enabler, if you will. Now, what is the journey to world class? And there are a number of activities or a number of strategies that play a very important role in getting to that level of performance. And what I'm showing to you here is probably something that is familiar to you. Many organizations that are going through a transformation program or that are working in improvement initiatives are going through all of those, probably at different stages. And everything starts to strategic alignment, which is absolutely fundamental. What are the type of services that you want to deliver as a procurement function to the rest of the business? And what model that you are going to put in place to support support the business and support enabling their objectives. But obviously, it's not only, as I was saying, it's about the alignment, which is critical, but it's not only about that. And procurement functions need to do all with less and a very efficient form to deliver great value. So typically in that journey, it is about eliminating complete, for example, or activities that they are really not adding value, to simplifying your processes, the practices you use, your data structures, for example, also your technology architecture. So it is about also simplification and standardization, as you can see. So most probably all of you have been going through similar stages, one by one, etc. And there are some enablers very important to consider while you are doing all of those activities, addressing all those issues in order to get an improved performance. And automation is clearly one of them. Reducing your effort and errors, which helps you with quality, helps you with your internal cost, your efficiency. And really, some of the things that organizations are doing is also about the leverage delivery. So it's about best model that we can put in place in order to deliver services. And including here, we would see centers of skill or scale, in all those type of things. And in particular, also in this step, if you will, or in this stage, IT enablement is important. So it's not only about automation of all those great activities that you simplify, standardize, that are aligned to what you really need to deliver to the business, but also in the model that you decide to go with the business. Technology also play an important role. For example, I don't know, probably many of you, if not all of you, work for global organizations, and in a very decentralized or at least center-led organization, IT enablement is also playing a role. So it is about going through all these steps and enabling that particular level of performance. But as we all know, and I was just discussing just before, it is not exclusively about having the best people or having the best processes. At Hackett, we use this model, we call it the service delivery model. And what we have seen is, in particular, those world-class organizations, those that are in this blue box. And in this particular, it's not only for procurement, it's really across other functions in the company. Organizations are architecting the delivery model. So they need to deliver a particular service, partner with the business, and deliver the services they provide. And they are architecting very consciously how they are going to deliver those services. And so some of the elements that you see in the model are well known and have been around for many, many years. The process, which is quite important, the skills and talent, the governance that you have in the organization structure that you put in place. More and more, particularly because of the way that you are delivering those services, issues around the sourcing. Are we doing this internally, or are we using external provider that can help us to deliver those services, or are we doing everything, that question in-house, or probably not, and we'll go outside, or other type of questions around, do we need to be very close to our internal stakeholders, or actually we centralize some of those activities and potentially even put somewhere else in an offshore location. So, these dimensions from the work that we do with organizations, but in particular the work class, so they are very consciously architecting this. And out of these dimensions, obviously we have two absolutely critical and very important as part of the entire model, which is information and enabling technology. You will think why actually we are, or I'm talking about information different as enabling technology, and indeed there are different dimensions to consider. When I'm talking about information, it's all about the data standards that you are using, the master data elements, the structure really of the data, the repositories that you have with structured information, and nowadays more and more unstructured information. So all that, it has a link with technology, and you're able to leverage all that. But it's absolutely fundamental for enabling performance and giving with those great processes that you probably have been designing and the that you have with the right skill, being able to get to be able to deliver that performance. Is absolutely critical, and in many cases is coming together with a technology bit that enables you to do a number of interesting things. Still, it is an important element that needs to be considered to an extent separate, or it has its own importance. For example, we are talking about master data. The entire governance around that is fundamental, and it probably has nothing to do with technology that later on is going to be able to enable all that. What I'm talking about, the second very important dimension that is pertinent for today's webinar is enabling technology. So what are the platform that the organizations are going to be using? What is the functionality that they are going to put in place? Some of the analysis that we have done in the past is of having only one ERP system of an organization, which clearly delivers value. Now, nowadays it's difficult to have one ERP such, and there are other different solutions. It could potentially be very expensive, so organizations are forced to architect their solutions and their platforms in a different way, and to still gain all the advantages of having the right technology. So again, 2 points of the entire equation. There is no, I haven't seen any company that just implemented technology or that just, went about designing these processes or having the right people addressing the other elements. So when we talk about enabling world-class performance, all of these dimensions have an important role to play, but they have an entire equation and not on its own. Let me move on in terms of enabling technology, if we are going to go a little bit deeper in that one. And this is just a slide showing some of the different type of functionality that is out there that is great. For Hackett is not about a particular solution provider, and rather what is the functionality that enables performance. And there are many different ways of how to go about picking the right solutions for the organization. But if you have the entire supplier lifecycle management, looking at supplier master data, performance and risk, very important areas to consider nowadays about monitoring risk, tracking that performance, and nowadays with all the volatility in the markets, it's very important to be looking into that area. And you can see the other components. eProcurement, probably the oldest around the different technology provided, going to really helping to support the transactional type of transactions and activities within the source to settle area, but absolutely critical in enabling spend visibility, for example. We need to have a procurement function to be able to get that level of detail. And if you think about the more transactional piece, well, there's a number of eInvoicing solutions as well that help this end-to-end transactional piece to automate and to enable a number of best practices. Very important. More from the sourcing type of solutions, spend analysis absolutely critical for the work that is done in procurement. A junk in that area of solutions that can help and a very important role in achieving work-class performance. The entire eSourcing suite, contract lifecycle management, more and more complex organizations with a high number of contracts, having visibility all of those. But also the tools that help you to go through the life cycle in a more efficient way. So, if you think about all these, a lot of functionality, a lot of great things, which need to be aligned, as we were saying, with the right information behind that enables all of this, and also right process, etc. So, some of the what we said that we were going to, have as an objective of this webinar was about how it's enabling them and how good technology is really enabling performance. And we have a lot of analysis, and if you are familiar with Hackett, you see a lot of metrics and KPIs. But what we do all this information is clearly to make an analysis of that. And what I was saying at the beginning of the webinar, we take work exclusively on the performance, so in outcomes. But what we do is we take that group of organizations and we analyze what they do different than the rest. Clearly, they are doing very things similar to what the rest of organizations are doing. We really want to understand what are those things that really make a difference in achieving that top quartile performance. Now, when we look at technology, and we are saying, what is the role of technology in all this equation, is we see that actually world-class organizations spend about the same money in IT and all this technology for enabling their processes and their organization. But the reality is that they derive more value from their investments. It's not only about, if you see the left-hand side graph, actually what they have is they have less cost. So this is the operating cost of the procurement function. And if you see that graph on the left-hand side, we're talking about the process cost, which is in Hackett terminology includes the labor cost, potential outsourcing cost, and other type of costs that you might have. So if we look at all costs, and clearly the process and other costs is much higher than technology costs as such. You compare world class with non-world class, or really the median of the rest of the organizations. In principle, the technology bit is not that different. So it's not that world organization is spending a lot of money in technology. It's to an extent similar to the rest of the organizations, but still they have less cost, about 23% less. And if you look at the right-hand side graph, it's about the FTEs, the full-time equivalents per billion spent. What you see there is that actually there is a really, if you technology for labor swap in some of the activities. Remember that procurement transactional activities included other activities which are not transactional that are also enabled by technology. But in principle, some of the characteristics and obviously some of the benefits is that world-class organizations have done that with a similar spending, if your investment in technology, they have been able to deliver great value on that. Something that I don't have in this slide, in this deck, is actually another that we have done in terms of the type of functionality that is available. The majority of the organizations, to a certain extent, they have most of the functionality available in their systems or in the solutions that they have been. Now, the reason why the majority of the spend, the majority of the activity, the majority of the transactions are not used through that technology is, there's a lot of variance in why this happened. Probably not the right technology, probably was the right time when the big implementation was done, probably not the right focus in or change management for usage. There are many reasons for that. But if you look up, as I was explaining this slide, in terms of the amount of money that is spent or the investment in IT is not that different. If you look at functionality as such, available, necessarily being used, is to a certain extent very similar. So there are other things that are making the difference in how organizations are leveraging their technology. There is a study that we run every year in terms of what are the critical areas for procurement executives and senior executives and addressing for next year. And we are at the end of 2015, so this slide is actually 1 year old. We are running right now the 2016. Let me know as well if you would like to participate. But what this study is looking at, what are the key issues for the year to come. But we also look in terms of what are the more important activities or initiatives that organizations are working on. We are going to work during a particular year. And as you see, although these are for 2015, organizations are still working on that. Or, they have been making progress in some of those, so they are still quite current. But this is exclusively for the technology transformation. So we wanted to understand what the majority of the organizations are looking at in terms of the level of activity for technology and information for the initiatives that they have been running. See if between none and moderate and major, and it's clearly that aligned to the strategy and the roadmap, in particular for technology, is one of the key areas to focus for this year. If you see at the top, clear for us, KPIs is part of the information I mentioned. But if you see development information reporting strategies, data governance, stewardship, very important, and a very important piece for data and analytics related type of initiatives, which are an absolutely enabler of class performance. But if you go down the list, development technology roadmap, out of some analytic applications, service enablement, etc., many organizations are, as I was saying, large and struggle with their size and probably have been acquired a number of organizations, and therefore it might be difficult for them. Well, not necessarily difficult, but they have also something to do around platforms, for example. And we have heard a lot in terms of cloud as well. Some are ongoing in that direction. So, in principle, it's absolutely top in the agenda for procurement functions, addressing the technology and the information dimensions of in their organizations. I'll share with you what the capabilities that really correlate to procurement and purchase-to-pay performance, really from source to settle. And depending on the type of capability, obviously this is enabling performance in a different area. So right now, really source to settle, it would take, process by process, as this is what we do at Hackett. We would be able to go deeper in a particular process. We're talking about master data, we're talking about supplier management or risk management, or whatever the process is, or the explainable side option, etc. But overall, I just wanted to leave you with, these are some of the real capabilities that enable performance. And let me spend 2 seconds around what I mean with correlation. Hackett collects a lot of information because that's the way that we work, and we gather a lot of data in a very strict way, a very rigorous way that enable us to compare, and we have been doing this for the last probably 20 years. So this is not new. And when I say correlate, to performance is that statistically we can find correlations statistically to that. So if you ask me, and I've been already some years around working in that and helping organizations in achieving their objectives as performance initiatives, I would definitely say clearly spend visibility is core of what we are doing, master data, of course, but it's really about how this is enabling them. Is a little bit of the difference in here. So let me go through them, and then I'm going to take you to some examples of those. Spend visibility, and we are talking about spend visibility. These can have a different components by supplier, by commodity, by contract, by cost center, by key stakeholder, which might be a little bit different, etc. So having the ability to really see spend fundamental for enabling world-class performance, really statistically correlates. Obviously, if you have that visibility and do nothing with it, obviously you won't get the performance. But in principle, it is fundamental. And the second one is about master data consolidation and standardization. And I'm giving some examples: vendor master, commodity coding taxonomies, item catalog master, etc. So having that typically is not very sexy if you are doing a project in this area. It's not sexy, and it's very complex, and it takes probably a good amount of time, and it's not time, it's a lot of effort to get these things right. And this depends on the complexity of your organization. But absolutely fundamental. If you think, for example, about in the P2P space, and there are some solutions nowadays that are helping. This is one of the best practices around buying. So enabling requisitioners to get to the right suppliers, the right contracts. All has to do with compliance, but enabling them to get to the right place for what they're doing. And clear, there is technology that help you on that. Now, the master data is absolutely critical and really fundamental to get it right, because through that, the technology enables you to do those type of things. So very important. The first one is about process automation and integration, and it is very straightforward. I don't think I need to say anything as such. The important thing in this bit is about internally and externally. So nowadays, more and more the procurement function is in the middle between the business and the external world. So one of the core acts and capabilities that procurement functions need to do is to do this properly, and clearly process automation and integration is absolutely fundamental. Self-service functionality, and you can think about the requisitioners from suppliers, but also category managers. So in principle, self-service functionality is also critical. Integration between procurement and payables, very important, and very important to achieve and to assure compliance of sourcing activities end-to-end. So these are some of the critical information and technology capabilities that truly correlate to performance. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through some of the examples and how this is going. Now, I want to make emphasis in the fact that this is the enabler, but there are many other things that need to be in place in order to achieve the results. So let me do some of these examples and how you can read through this. I'm looking at the left-hand side, spend visibility and order automation. So what we have done with our data is having a link between the spend visibility and order automation. And I think everybody would agree that order automation generates benefits in this area. technology can generate benefits in this area. So that's why I didn't address that as such. But if you if you manage to get with automation in terms of the purchase order, this drives the spend visibility. So if you look at organizations that are saying, well, we have high visibility, between high and low visibility of our spend, there's a clear link between the order automation. So there are many things that can be done to achieve spend visibility, but getting into automating the order processing is also very important. 19% order automation for those organizations that spend visibility at the line item level. We could deeper in some of these with the link, but very important. There is a clear link between automating this. Now, on the left and right hand side, and obviously I'm looking first in these examples are in more in the sourcing area. I also have another set of examples for the more transactional. But if you see in the right hand side, those are savings, and these are spend savings that organizations are using through use of eSourcing tools, but at various levels of utilization. So in this case, organizations are not using or using it, but to a lower extent. And if you ask me, we have definitions for that, how organizations would answer the question that we were raising for this. But moderate to extensive use of sourcing tools. And what we see is that from cost reduction and cost avoidance, there is a clear increase in terms of the percent of savings that organizations are achieving. Not can achieve. This already happened. This is based on the benchmarking data that we have. So there's an important role of the eSourcing tools. Now you can see the organization is not only about utilizing those tools. Well, it's not only about having the functionality available. It's rather about using the tool. Now, if we would go a little bit deeper on this one, I could tell you there's another correlation that clearly states that there is a link not only with the tool as it is in this correlation that is so evident, but it's also another one that is saying you need to be very clear in the spend category spend level in terms of how you could use or when you should use that particular tool. Otherwise, there's still a lot of questions. We get a lot of questions in terms of how to improve usage of the technology, and obviously it has to do with management, also with the organization and the structure that you put in place around this. But I want to leave this view as well in terms of the level of usage has also to do with clear and how well defined is for what type of spend, what type of tool should be used. So going a little bit deeper helps a lot. But as you can see, and the bits I think are evident, but there is a link, there is a correlation between you get the order automation in place and you get spend visibility. You are using a particular number of tools around eSourcing, and then you start to see results at the savings level. If you want me, if you ask me, is this the only reason why those savings are there? Obviously not. There are many other components, but statistically, this really actually correlates to achieving, some of those savings. So let me take you through two other examples, which are more in the transactional side, and also have to do with what we were talking about, self-service, for example. And let me start with the left-hand side. In that correlation, we're working at catalogs, is the spend that is going through that, and seeing if there is a relationship with the cost of processing purchase orders. And when we look at, we look at our database and we saw organizations, and we divided our database under the organizations in there. We look at how they are, what is the process cost, and we make we look at what would be the cost that they are paying. And when I'm saying process cost, is labor and outsourcing per port. But we look at the percent of indirect spend on e-catalogs, and there was a clear link, and you get in that graph that 90% when organizations are using 40% of the indirect spend is going to e-catalogs. What is the cost per port? Similar to UVC low, percent of the indirect spend is going through catalogs, the process cost per order. So there's a big difference between the cost that you can, the cost per purchase order. This is going into the efficiency side. But like this, I could show you, I don't know, 3 or 4 other correlations that are looking into, for example, the savings, the link to accounts payable, utilizing catalogs, e-catalogs with the benefits that are being achieved in accounts payable, but also around compliance, the other way around, and utilizing those contracts that sourcing has negotiated. So there is a clear link between those type of activities that are supported or enabled by technology. Go into the right-hand side. Example, average percent of accounts payable inquiries addressed through self-service. This is top performance and non-top performance. You might be wondering why performer. This is more looking at the transactional area. That's why we call it a little bit different, but the concept is still the same in the top quartile performance. And then we see this is a clear characteristic of more in the settlement side and the accounts payable organization. Self-service is critical, and these are only inquiries. I would also show you the link between electronic invoicing and the cost per invoice, for example. Fact-based, data that shows that is clearly a link between those enablers, so that functionality has been put in place. So I actually talk about 4 examples, one in the sourcing area and more the purchasing area, another one self-service, and with the purchasing accounts payable. And if you can see, it's really about some of those key capabilities that really correlate. If you ask me about a particular solution that correlates to performance, I could say that that's not the case. We cannot see a particular solution that is correlated, but the different types of functionality and how you can put this in your organization is what's really driving the world-class performance. Let me take you through almost my last slide. We're almost getting at the end of the presentation, and about some of the benefits. I think most of you are aware of the benefits that this can. Obviously, increases productivity, and so some of the metrics that I show in terms of how this swap technology, investment in technology, and there are, for example, full-time equivalents. We can see this in productivity in the transactional side, and the PO processing and the accounts payable area dramatically, but also in the sourcing area around contract management, or for example the sourcing execution. Increases in cost reduction and avoidance. I actually show you some of those, and we work with a lot of organizations that ask you, they are building their business cases and say, do you have some of those benchmarks? And we can work with them that, and there's clearly a link to consistency, quality, and compliance. I didn't show you correlations in that area, but we have data that can show that there is a link between that. For example, we have in the sourcing area a correlation between the things that are negotiated savings that were lost because of the contracts were not utilized. And this has to do with many things around compliance. But for example, if you have your guided buying in place, supported by the right technology, this can definitely help you to increase compliance and reduce the negotiating savings that are just lost because actually the contracts were never used. Collaboration and knowledge sharing. For example, in the supplier management area, definitely collaboration that can support the internally and internally within the a global-based team definitely can profit from all that. Decreases cycle times. I think I didn't include one of those, but we also have some questions. If you are interested, let me know. Definitely areas where you can reduce the cycle times in the sourcing area as well as in the more transactional area. Operating costs, increase of productivity. We definitely see the decrease in the operating cost position time. This is more clearly on the sourcing side. And risk. In risk, for example, if you see the level of visibility that you have, for example, in the contract space, what are the contracts, what are all your commitments, definitely this can help. Also with suppliers and error rates. And error rates, I'm talking only about the transactional area. Error rates can be seen in all the different areas. We have been more, or lower impact in the organization. Definitely is where technology well executed can be of a lot of help. Sorry. So let me just go through my last slide and the closing remarks. By the way Hackett defines world-class, top quartile, they definitely outperform their peers in both areas in efficiency and in effectiveness. And we see technology just before that. The advantage of being a world-class organization can be seen definitely the cost of running the procurement function, but very important when I'm talking about effectiveness and the value that they are delivering to their organization, and the value, the traditional values in savings, and now that we can see that there is a link between those, technology enablement and delivering value also in the savings area. But there are many other areas that organizations are delivering value, which are not as straightforward as it used to be, where it's only about automating some of the more repetitive tasks. Technology and information, and let me say these two are very important, are fundamental components of this service delivery model that organizations, the companies are building in order to their efficiency and effectiveness and adding value. And I want to leave you with the idea of these two elements play a very important role, but the entire question considers the other 5 bubbles of 7 elements. So when you are going through your engagements, these 2 are fundamental, but consider the other ones because you also need the right people and the structures and governance, for example, and processes. And the last point, technology requires to be properly embedded in the organization. I can tell you there's a number of organizations that come to us, and I have a lot of discussions and usage. How can suppliers, or how can make sure that suppliers are using it, my internal stakeholders are using it, my category managers are using it. So it needs to be working properly. It's not only about the functionality, as obviously you all know, but I just really wanted to reiterate this. So with that, we're 10 minutes before closing the webinar. I hope that I gave just a view in terms of some of the areas of benefit some of the correlations, some of how this is playing, technology and information are playing a role in detecting the service, the model for procurement. So we have just minutes to go. Before that, let me see, because I've been receiving some questions. Just let me just try to answer some of the questions. I think there is one question about the savings and explaining slide number 14. And what we do in terms of savings is we have a number of organizations in our database, and I'm talking about the slide on the right-hand side. So we took all the companies that we have in our databases, and we separated between organizations that are not using eSourcing tools, sourcing processes, for those that use it to a low extent, more than extensive. And we put it in two groups, not too low and very too extensive. Now, based on what we asked them to do this was based on the number, if I recall correctly, on the spend that is going through that. So if you have a lot of spend going through those tools, also we look at the number of events that are run through that, or transactions, you will, because it might be that you have only one vendor that's going through a particular tool. So spend is important, but also transactions. So we separated in those two groups, and we look at the savings that they report. We ask, when we run these, we ask organizations to follow definition about savings so that we can make comparisons. Obviously, this is not the most sophisticated definition, so that people, companies can provide, can generate those values for us for that external comparison. And what you can see is for the group, the mean of the group that is a non and low usage of tools, of e-sourcing tools in our sourcing process, you see the savings, and the savings for the moderate and extensive. And you can see that those organizations that are using higher extent the e-sourcing tools are able to achieve higher savings. Now, as I was saying, tools are not the answer for, you get the tools and you get the savings. It's not as easy as that. There's another question. Let me see. Spend. I think this is not the question. Yes, sorry. People are asking me about catalog spend. I think this. I think this is I could reconfirm. I don't have from the top of my mind, but I know there's a spend. Very important. These correlations. I'm not saying that organizations at highest level, work organizations are not going 40% of the indirect spend to that as such. This 40% is for the organizations looking at this correlation. If you ask me, I know the number as such, I can for you, but it's the world-class numbers have a different value in terms of the percent that is going through e-catalogs. But it's showing that you use e-catalogs, and clearly the cost per order is going down quite a lot. Okay, there are also some other questions, probably more in terms of the definitions behind. To work with you on those. We're going to get. I'm going to be answering those questions in terms of the definitions. Clearly, when we run these studies and the data is coming from, there's a lot to work on what the definition behind so that you're able to compare it. For today, if you see actually in purpose, I took out some of the values because it might be, difficult to start comparing. But I'm going to forward you those questions as well. So we are coming at the end of the session. Let me know if you have any further questions. Then we have 4 minutes to go, and the rest of the questions I'm getting, I'm a little bit too detailed, so I'm probably going to follow up with you directly. Thank you very much for your time today, and thank you very much for Zycus in inviting me to be your host today. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.